Hello, and hindsight is 50-50. I'm the host, Jay Rudd, with my co-host, the ORG, the old retired guy. Dad, how you doing?
Doing pretty good. It's late fall and winter. The first official day of winter is what, 4 days away?
Is that what it is?
21st or 22nd. Yeah. But it's gray and right now no snow. I don't think it doesn't look like we're gonna have a white Christmas, but that's always hard to tell this far out.
True.
But yeah, I don't it's funny how you get as you get older, these things have an impact on you. My mom's 88 and she said, "Well," she said this to me yesterday. She goes, "Well, it won't be too long before we're through it." And I go, "Mom, it hasn't, it hasn't even started yet." But I wanted to,
I mean, if time flies by faster as you get older, it
I
might
don't know.
almost be over for her, because I swear each year seems go like it goes by a little bit faster.
Well, that could be true. And depending on how much you're enjoying it. But it's like she's already, you know, thinking we're rounding the bend and we haven't even started yet. But I wanted to talk a little bit about my Uncle Bud. He passed away last week and or week before last. And he was my dad's youngest brother. I believe he is 78. He'd be 79 in March. But just a great guy, really good family. He was a lot like a brother to me. Um, he was only like 9 years older than me. And because I was a big kid and he wasn't, I mean,
Caught him quick.
we were close in size when I was pretty young. But he and my dad's other living brother Paul, um, well, now his only living brother Paul. They're and Paul's a couple years older than Bud. They were both like I was tight with both of them. They were both in our wedding, your mom and my wedding. Um, but he's just a good guy, and it was hard. I know you and I went to the graveside. Your mom and I and Jacob actually went to um the funeral home service that they had in Indiana, and just a wonderful guy. I mean, the one of the coolest things about Bud is that he was a retired executive. He lived in Indiana. I don't know the city's proximity to Fort Wayne, but I want to say I'm sure it's less than an hour from Fort Wayne. It's about 2.5 hours from us. But he had a really successful career. You've seen the property that he put together.
Gorgeous.
He adopted like seven, I think, wild Mustangs um, from the through the Department of Interior. I mean, he lived a great full life. He was a real godly man, but he was one of these guys that you when he did something, he was all in. Like I remember he was not very. I don't want to say he was unathletic, but I don't think he played organized sports in high school. I don't think he did. And um, I remember they moved around quite a bit because of his job. And at one of the places he lived in Indiana, it was probably, you know, maybe 150 yards to their mailbox, so around 500 feet, something a little less. And one day people were teasing him about being heavy. And because, I mean, he's an executive, people are taking him to lunch all the time. It's one of those tough things to do, when people are whining and dining you, especially if you like to eat,
I'm
which
heavy and
I do.
people don't whine and
Well,
dine
that's
me.
what I'm saying.
So,
They don't wine and dine me either, and I'm heavy, but he decides to wonders if he can run to his mailbox. So one day he does that. And this is just kind of person he was. Within a year, He ran a 26.2 mile marathon, and he ran in several of
And he should
those.
be ashamed of himself to ever run that far for fun.
But he was just like I remember when he got out of the service, and he was like on a drinking binge when he got out of the service. And I mean, he was like that drinking. It was like balls out.
Yeah, that's more my pace. I'd rather do that.
But no, just everything he did, he hunted like that. He rode motorcycles like that.
You
He'd
couldn't pay
ride you to
me.
death. He'd just keep riding and riding and riding. It's like, when are we gonna take a break? I think I've told the story about Alan and I on a trip with he and some of the guys that work with him, and Uncle Paul was in that group, and they were riding to Maine from his place in Indiana. All of them gathered there. Alan and I rode down, and we said, because we only had like 3 or 4 days, so we said, we'll ride as far as we can towards Maine, and then we'll turn around and come back. So we split off from them, I believe, in New York State. But it was so intense, he'd just ride you to death.
That
It's like,
sounds terrible
oh,
and gay.
it yeah, the way I said it sounded that way. But we called him Iron Butt because he just
That's
would,
really gay.
well, it's not meant in that way. But he would just, you'd ride a motorcycle till you retired. But anyway, I loved him, and he was a great guy, and he's got a wonderful family who I care deeply about. But I wanted to acknowledge him because he fought cancer for 14 years, and in this case it just kept coming back, and it finally got him. But
Yeah, but I mean, like, to be fair, it was just like life, though. It's like he was the stubborn son of a bitch who
oh
wouldn't
man,
die.
oh
And that's
man,
something that I think's kind of cool and unique, and I'm sure people know others like it. But for me, I don't know anyone like that, where there's such a genuine, kind soul combined with the most stubborn personality you've ever met. Like, I usually, when you meet someone stubborn, they suck. They're an ass. And it's like, for someone to be not just religious, but I mean, he was just genuinely a kind, loving person, at least from what I knew him.
sure, yeah,
And his wife and kids seem the same way.
yep.
But for him to, all these stories, because I didn't get to participate in them, but for him to have had such a stubborn persona while maintaining the other side of loving, kind family, it just seems like quite a unique combination to put together.
Well, you guys got double whammies, all three of you boys, you and both your brothers, because I mean, it's kind of a family joke about how stubborn the Sawyers are. It's just kind of a joke. There were jokes made of it at his funeral service,
Yeah.
you know. And then you know how stubborn your mom is. So you guys, holy crap.
Yeah,
But
we got the Scully stubbornness.
yeah, but the Sawyer stubbornness. But one of the things about my Uncle Bud, and again, there's a lot of wonderful things, and I'll think of other Bud stories that I believe are entertaining, but just a couple things about him. He's one of those guys that no matter when you saw him, you'd catch up right where you left off. It was like you didn't, and sometimes it would be
Yeah.
years before I'd see him, but it was always just like you just picked up right where you left off. And I remember it was at a wedding. I don't remember whose, it doesn't matter. This was before you were born. I think I think Jacob was born, but I don't even think Joe was born yet. And it was at somebody's wedding, and I don't remember. But, Bud was there, and your mom and I came in, and we sat down, and Bud saw us, and we sat down in the Catholic church, it was a great big church. And Bud came up and sat down next to us. And, and this is the first I've seen him, we shook hands and smiled, and you're at a wedding right before the ceremony, so you can't talk a ton, you know. And I said, your mom says to me, she goes, "Is my nose bigger than that lady's right there?" And she, there was a lady standing to our right, and I knew who she meant. And I didn't say anything to her. I just leaned over to Bud and I go, "Is Jane's nose bigger than that lady's right there?" And he looked at your mom and shook his head no and squinted his eyes. No, no, it's not.
He always had a really good chuckle.
He would just play along, he always did. And he was a great guy. It's the classic thing that he's not suffering anymore, and I know he's not, and I know for a fact that if you believe in those things, he did and I do, he was at peace with his maker. He
Yeah.
they had settled that a long time ago. And but he was just a
I
great
mean,
guy.
God, he did about all you can do in a lifetime.
Did a lot of good stuff, did a lot of cool stuff.
Infectious smile too. I
Oh
know
yeah.
I know we have holidays on here, but it was just one of the things that reminds me of the holidays is his smile. He's got like for lack of better way of explaining it, it's like how Santa's got a jolly smile that it lights up the room. It's not creepy. It's not
Right.
weird. It just you see him and you even if you're not super into it, you just smirk a little bit. That's how Bud was every time I saw him. He always had a smile. He had a chuckle like grandpa's that I remember.
Oh yeah.
And that to me was always great when you got either of them laughing. It was a good time and kind of like a belly laugh.
Oh yeah.
But I just, I don't even think I can remember a time where I didn't see him smiling. He always seemed like he was happy about something or getting ready to be busy, happy doing something.
I've seen him pissed. You
Well,
don't
yeah, I'm
wanna
sure
be
you
on that
have.
you don't
Wow,
wanna be on
stubborn.
you don't wanna be on that side of it. I've seen him pissed, and you don't wanna be on this. I don't think he's ever pissed at me, but you don't wanna be on that side of it because he had that fire in him, but
And he always did
just
unique stuff too. Like
great guy.
when he was, I mean, I know you and I have talked in the past about how was an avid gun collector.
Oh, big time.
I remember the first time I went down to their house and I saw his gun room down there and all the things that he had, which was, I mean, most like indoor ranges with gun shops don't have this many firearms in their building. It was not only impressive, but it was kind of like mind-boggling at how unique of a path he went down. Like he has some of your stereotypical guns, but he doesn't have like what the standard AR-15 that everybody buys 6 of and all this crap. It's like I remember going down there and seeing a gray wood pistol on the wall, and I asked him about it. And Audrey, his granddaughter,
Mhm.
she she wasn't old enough to shoot a BB gun yet. Well, it turns out this was a black powder single shot BB gun pistol. I didn't even know that existed.
Right.
But it was. It had like the little ramrod type stuff for it too, and it was almost like more musket style than muzzleloader style.
Mm.
Uh, But I mean, just cool things like that. Like he always had something that you hadn't seen, and I think I cherish that quality because Grandpa was like that with knives and
Oh,
different
yeah.
utility tools. He'd have something that you're like, "What in the hell is that?" And then you're like, "All right, that's pretty cool."
He again, he was wined and dined, but he was a very important guy in his job, and people knew that he liked to hunt. I don't know if you remember seeing it or even if he had it the time that you saw his gun room, but he had a blowgun like the African natives used.
I feel like I have seen it. Yeah,
He had a longbow that was a native longbow from Africa. Like,
that would
and
be
again,
like
people would
awesome.
get him these gifts or, let him know where he could get something, where something was available. And he just, he really did. He enjoyed hunting. I went on some hunting trips with him, went on several motorcycle trips, several hunting trips with him, and always had a good time. He just was a good time. Um, but again, great family. His wife Melba, they were married 55 years. 55 years.
I mean, I won't forget that steak she made me till the day I die, and I think I was 10.
Really?
I mean, I was so young that it was one of those, grandpa wanted to go down there, but we had to make sure everything was good. He had to check in with it wasn't like I could just even though it was we weren't staying the night, it wasn't like I could just go with him. I was young
Sure.
enough to where we had to check in and follow all that stuff, and, um, I can't remember what we were bringing him, if we were bringing him hay or something, but we brought a trailer.
Uh,
And we drove all the way down, and I saw his horses, saw his property, the gun room, all that, and then his wife Melba made a steak that I love steak, and that thing was phenomenal. And unfortunately, I haven't known her as well as I've known Bud, but in the bits and pieces I've seen, she's always been a sweetheart, super kind, open. She'd do anything for you type of person, and as sad as it was to have to say goodbye and seeing his son give a eulogy and all that, you could tell that Melba was already at peace
yeah.
and happy that he wasn't struggling, and that was nice to see that she wasn't torn apart or distraught. Not that she won't miss him, but like she's on the same page Bud was. So it's like it's okay that you're moving on and I'll see you in the future.
Yeah, she had a lot she had a good amount of time to get used to the idea for sure.
Yeah.
And but she's again, she tells me this. She says I think it's the phrase she uses is my circle is small. It's like she says she doesn't have a lot of friends. And the ones that she has, she's close with, but it's not a great big group of friends. I've been lucky to be on the inside of that circle. I started going to church with them when I was 13 years old.
Mm.
And I was there at their house when she brought their oldest Angel home from the hospital after her birth. I was there. I had stayed with Bud the night that Angel was born, and then within a couple of days they brought Angel and Melba home. He did, and I was there
It
when
is
she
kind of
came home.
unique how your dynamic with them influenced, I guess, like mine and my brother's dynamic with them because Bud's your uncle.
Right,
He's my great uncle.
right,
But because you guys were so close in age and you're more like brothers than uncle and nephew, Bud was a lot more like an uncle.
right.
Like he wasn't
Yeah,
when I think of great, it's
I
almost
know.
always old and
I
like
get it.
they're winding down, but he was in the tail end of his youth when I started to realize who he was as a person and then started going into his later retirement years. But it was just kind of unique and cool because I, I don't know, I guess not a lot of people get to experience that. And usually you only get an opportunity, at one or two uncles or whatever the case is. And obviously in our family we've had Rick was very close, but like Uncle Jim was not,
Mhm.
just because of where he lived. And so on certain aspects that you missed out on, you got to pick up on with Uncle Bud and other things and his relationship with Grandpa, especially because he was so uh, more energetic because he was younger. So you still got to have fun with him.
Well, I think that a lot of it, and I don't know if I'm using the right word to describe it, but it seems like it's unconditional. Like, okay, Bud and Melba, they always seemed like just two kind of cool friends. They didn't seem like my aunt and uncle. They didn't.
Yeah.
I mean, I'd introduce them that way because that's what they were. but they didn't seem like that, and I think Melba is, like, 6 years older than me, and Bud was
9.
gonna be yeah, 8.5, 9, yeah,
Well, it does, like, and again, you were saying, maybe it's not the right way to describe it. I don't know what the right way is, but it reminds me, or at least the way I think of it, is like a fraternity. Where it's like certain people make brothers for life, and it's
mhm,
like you could check in at any time and stop under almost any circumstance, and you'd have a place to stay and a friend there, and that's just how they were. It was like I don't think I ever questioned whether, like, I would be welcome to come there if I had to come on a moment's notice. It was never a hesitation. I think at one point we even talked about it just, if anything were to ever happen to you and mom at the same time, they would have been my godparents.
that's what we wanted, yeah,
And so it's like that was always just kind of cool. It's weird because I guess you have these certain placeholders in your life. And I know that's not the most like celebrated term, but like they never waver. And
right?
so it's
They're
cool that
constants.
no matter what point you're at in your life, if you needed to check in, you needed to stop by, they were gonna be there, and that's how Bud and Melba always were to me.
When you love them, you automatically love their family, like their kids, Angela and Eric and Valerie. It's like they just joined the group, you know, and it's very, like I said, it's like unconditional. That's how they are, and I, I think you guys could all feel that. You all knew it. That's how they were with you. Like you guys are really family, you know,
Yeah.
and it doesn't. And you're right. That's a good way to describe it. It doesn't waver, but I wanted to talk about Uncle Bud, and he had a great life. He was a great uncle. He was a great friend, and he'll be missed. Um,
Oh, yeah.
he'll be missed, but you know, he said to me, I just to finish up with one thing he said to me. He said this to me probably a half a dozen times in the last year. And this is when I talk about him being at peace with his maker, and I'm sure I'm paraphrasing, okay, but it was words to the effect of, you know, I won't be here one day longer than I'm supposed to, and I won't leave here one day before I'm supposed to. And I truly believe that's how he felt. I mean, that's how he felt. Um, so at any rate, a really good friend and a really good guy, and he's going to be missed. It's hard when this happens around the holidays too, because holidays are family time, and you know, um,
Yeah, but I think it's how
seems
you
like it always
know
happens.
I think it's how you know you led a good life, though, is because if you didn't leave an impact and a lasting memory when you left, you wouldn't have like your life wouldn't have been anything people were missing or celebrated. But when it's hard and people miss you and people can share stories and talk about you and all these things, it's like your presence is still with us because you
Right.
left a mark, you left an imprint here, and that to me is one of the signifying factors that you led a good life. It's like, do you have good children? Do they have good values? Are they raising young children with good values? Or whatever your core beliefs are. But then on top of that, it's like, but were you only limited to your children? No, you had all these great stories and all these things for people to remember you by, and they're not vindictive, angry memories. It's fun stories about motorcycle trips, hunting trips, things that you did, collecting things like wild Mustangs. Like it's
Yeah.
just, to me, that is just a great example of like, okay, so you lived a great life and that's why it's hard.
Yeah, and it is. It's one of those things that you're it. it's you're grateful to
Yeah.
for having known him and having been associated with him, and it's easy to say that. I've admired him. I've looked up to him. I told him that many times. I've always looked up to him. I always admired him. I would talk about him in glowing terms because of his successes and his not just his successes, his material successes, but because of his, the path he chose.
Well, it
And
never seemed to disappoint. I mean, you talked in a previous episode about his long lost son, for lack of a better term.
yeah, Daniel.
And, just a brief recap, this was a son that he did not know existed. And then when this son decided to reach out to him, there was zero hesitation. And he looks like an exact clone. It's frightening.
Amazing. Amazing.
But it there was no like that to me is another one of those things that like he may have been stubborn, he may have been religious, and you look at him and you're like, oh, the pedestal, but he never stepped off of it. Like even when he had the chance to be like, I don't need another thing, it's like he was more than happy to get to know that son and build a relationship with him in his remaining time he had here, and it seemed like that never was hesitant or wavered either. It was just he was this person who actually lives by the things that they say they believe are right,
Sure.
and that to me was cool, that it just everybody is gonna let you down sooner or later, but you hope it's not, like, horrific. And in this case, it was just another chance for him to be able to do that, and instead, he just showed how great of a guy he was again.
You
It
know,
just never
I told I met Daniel in person. The long lost son is the way best way to describe it. 'Cause it's exactly I think Daniel was in his 50s when he found out and then Bud found out. He didn't know. Neither Daniel didn't know until shortly before he reached out to Bud. And
and boy, there's no DNA test needed. Those
no,
2,
they do
oh
look
my
identical.
goodness.
It's funny.
It's scary.
It's funny. But, I told he and Melba and Daniel when I went Paul and I rode motorcycles down there a couple summers ago. And, that's when I met Daniel in person. And I told all three of them, I said, it's a this doesn't work with all three of you wanting it to. I
Right.
mean, Bud, like you said, Bud could have turned away. Daniel could have not reached out. Either one of them could have been bitter. Melba could have said, I don't want anything to do with that. That's not my son. She didn't do that. So I give them all credit and
That was open arms, like
yeah.
we said.
And it's a wonderful story. And I hope we're not sharing too much, but that's a wonderful story. And like I said, I'm proud of him. I'm proud of my Uncle Bud. And to me, he's always Uncle Bud. You know, that's that's just how I think of him as Uncle Bud. You know, he and Paul used to take me hunting, pheasant hunting. Um, each of them had bird dogs. I went um, deer hunting with both of them. We went up north bow hunting several times and always had a great time. So it just, again, great life, like you said, great life. He didn't get cheated and he sure didn't cheat us.
When you said he was always Uncle Bud, and that was he I told you how he's younger, and so it created a unique circumstance.
Uh,
What like, when I talk to, uh, my boys about Melissa's grandpa
uh-huh,
or Grandma Scully, it's great grandma or great grandpa.
sure.
Uncle Bud was never once great
Great
Uncle
Uncle
Bud.
Bud.
It's just
Yeah.
Uncle
It's
Bud.
just Uncle Bud.
That's just
No,
what it was.
he was you know, I am truly sure that he is in a better place, but he had a great life and we loved him a lot. And he's a good guy. We're lucky that we're lucky to be related to him. We're lucky we knew him.
And
You
as
know?
you recall more stories, especially if there's any funny ones, we'll have to jot them down so we can share them in the podcast.
Oh, there's funny ones. Yeah, there's some funny ones, and there's a lot of them, including all of his, I always called them lackeys that would go with him on motorcycle trips. And Alan and I had another word for him,
Yeah,
but
I'm sure you
the
did.
blank wads.
Yeah. But on that, obviously talking about family and all this good stuff and good memories. We got the holidays coming up, and
Yep.
we just had Thanksgiving.
Yep.
Now we're approaching Christmas. Did you want to revisit the Thanksgiving briefly and then move towards
Just
Christmas?
about that. The only thing I want to say about that is I have never had a meal where everything was so great. I mean, and I like to eat. There's no denying that. I didn't get this way by eating carrot sticks, but that was one of the better Thanksgiving Day meals I've ever had. We had turkey, we had ham, we had I mean the side
80
dishes
side
were
dishes.
this what?
80 side dishes.
Well, Melissa made that sweet potato thing. That's great.
Yep.
I know Jennifer made mac and cheese, which I liked. I really
But
liked.
that to
And
me
the
is what's really cool about it being so good is that we deal with different things. So it's w- like we know that you can't have a ton of sodium.
right,
So that's something that although you can't remove all of it, we're conscious of. We know that I'm a super picky eater
right.
and we dodge that. And we know that Jen is dairy free because she's lactose
Lactose
intolerant.
intolerant.
And yet somehow we get all this stuff to come together and we don't miss the traditional dishes.
No.
We still get to have them, but they also still taste great. It doesn't taste like some fake tofu bullshit either.
Well, I
So,
do know. I in fact, I asked your mom. It might have been this morning. If it wasn't, it was yesterday. I asked her what was on the menu for Christmas because we always do brunch, and I love that. That's fantastic.
mhm.
But I know there's some egg casserole thing. I know that Kelly's bringing bacon, the kind of bacon she makes, candied or something,
Oh,
I
okay.
think. Um, and your mom named off 4 or 5 things. It's like, "Oh, yeah." But I love the brunch thing. I love the pajama party thing.
I wanna Snoop Dogg has a recipe, and it's
Oh,
called
boy.
Millionaire Bacon Twists
Has it got
or
pot in it?
Billionaire. No, Billionaire Bacon Twists. It's what he does for the holidays, and you get not thick cut bacon, but wide cut that's
Okay.
thinner. And you do the same thing like you would with candy bacon, extra salt, black pepper, and brown sugar, and all that. And then you coat the hell out of the bacon with it. And then you take it to the smoker. But before you take it to the smoker, and instead of having like the long strips that can break and have all of the goody drip off of it while it's smoking, you twist them up really tight so they become like twisties, like the little twisted things you can get from Taco Bell or any other place
Right.
that have a cinnamon twist, but it's made out of bacon and they become hard crusted like that, almost twisted like a candy cane. And
Sounds
supposedly
good.
they're phenomenal. And it
Well,
retains a lot of the seasoning because the twist stops it all from running off.
I just can't. I mean, I obviously look forward to the holidays and seeing all the kids. But the Thanksgiving meal was fantastic. And when we do the brunch thing, I love that.
Yeah.
And the pajama party thing, I love that. I love brunch foods and I love everybody in their
Mashing with their kids.
favorite pajamas.
Shitter's full,
Yeah.
Clark. That is such a good shirt.
Yeah. It's a beaut, Clark.
Oh, one thing I wanted to say about Uncle Bud. I know we've passed the topic, but I did want to say this going back, just in case they're listening. Um, Eric spoke
Yeah.
graveside. and that's Bud's son, and he I thought he did a phenomenal job. I not only did he maintain composure, but I thought it was well spoken, incredibly respectful, and I came up to him afterwards, and there wasn't anything I can say to make anything better, so all I said was, "Well done,"
Yeah.
'cause that's what it was, and it was respectful, and I just in the event that any of their family is listening, I just wanted to, say
And
thank you and pay the respect due.
he was very good. He was great. He spoke at the funeral home service too,
Yeah,
and totally different than at the graveside,
that's
and he
awesome.
was great then too. So, yeah, he did a great
But I
job.
didn't wanna just
No,
skip past that, so.
he did a great job, and I told him, I said, he'd have been very proud of you. I
Oh, yeah.
expect he is, but you're right, you're right, Eric did a phenomenal job. Well, we've got a couple of football items locally, and I because it's local, this one's local, we won't dwell on it too far.
Well, how about the Lions first?
Yeah, I
I
don't know
th
how they can do
well,
this.
they first off, it was nice to have a good team this year, and
Yes.
it's sad that everything's trying to cut us short, but, boy, they really wanted to scare the shit out of us on Thanksgiving
Oh god.
and just have their that if they manage to scrape together any resemblance of a defense or a starting defense, I should say, because of all the injuries that have decimated them, I do think they'd have a chance. I don't know what type of signings you can do this late, and if you can have anybody that'll have impact or how much you could patch it, because at this point we're getting to where the offense has to play perfect. I mean, their last game was 48-42.
Yeah.
It's like your offense is trying everything they can, and not, well, obviously Montgomery got hurt, but so we had another injury on offense, but we're just getting to this point where it's like, where do you go? The reserves are depleted. The free agency is getting depleted by us. And it's like,
You have 2 choices this time of year. You're past the trade deadline. You can pick up a guy from another team's practice squad, which they did this week.
right.
That Michael Pitt, I think his name's not Michael Pittman, Anthony Pittman. Anyway, he had played for us for several years, only on special teams, a linebacker,
Okay.
and he was on Jacksonville's practice squad. Well, if you're gonna sign them off the practice squad, you have to put them on your active roster. They did that. So he's in. And then so you got the practice squad thing, but they have to be signed to your active roster. You can't just you can't poach somebody's practice squad and put them on your practice squad. They have to go on your active roster. And then you've got guys that are on the street, which two of those guys, Quan Alexander and Jamal Adams, played. I think they both started last against Buffalo. And those guys were they weren't on anybody's team or anybody's practice squad, as far as I know.
Well, and Jamal Adams is playing out of position, isn't he?
Well,
'Cause we're
yes.
putting him at linebacker, but he's a safety,
Yeah, but he's not a
but he's a
safety.
run fill safety.
Yeah, he's a strong safety, in the box, run support safety. So, but you're right, we are playing him out of position, but that's the only choice you can go, and you're right. That's how you have to look at it. They're 12-2. They're still the number one seed. They've got 3 games left. They've got the Bears in Chicago, which scares the hell out of me. Even though the Bears have lost like 8 in a row, counting last night. That's on turf, and it's at Soldier Field in the outdoors, which you can say what you want, but we're a dome team. Now, we've won outdoors this year, but that still scares me. And again, if we can't get pressure on the quarterback or cover a tight end, that Chicago's got a pretty good one in that Cole Kmet, or cover a back out of the backfield. They Buffalo knew that, and they had that Ty Johnson, who used to be a Lion, by the way, and he was their backs were open because our linebackers couldn't cover.
Well, because Campbell had to move.
Well,
See,
yeah,
our linebackers couldn't cover, so we had to put Campbell in coverage, and then our spy is slow as shit on one of the best
it's
running
just
quarterbacks in the league.
it's just bad. And it's we're decimated. There are 8 defensive linemen, from this team that are on injured reserve. 8 this year.
Yeah, I was reading the injuries from the start of the season to Melissa, and it was just like I got exhausted by the time you get to the end, and it's unfortunate because there's it seems like they're well coached, they're doing so well, and you feel like they're doing it the right way, and then these injuries come up, and you're just getting to a point where it's like, are we gonna have to be the exact opposite of the 2001 Ravens to make it happen? Because
Well,
the
I think
2001
so.
Ravens were there's such a good defense that well, they're one of like 2, I think, teams in NFL history that have traded the quarterback after winning a Super Bowl because the offense was so atrocious. And it's like ours is the opposite, and you just feel bad. I mean,
Yeah, we've got, the injury thing, and Campbell says it. I love him for it too. He goes, "Nobody's gonna feel sorry for us. Everybody gets hurt. This is a string of bad luck. It happens." And I mean, we got to get whoever is able to play. We got to get prepared and got to get them ready to play. And I think that's the best way you can do it. It's like next man up. And like you said, maybe from here on out, every game's a track meet, and we know that because that's the only way we can do it.
yeah, or you slow roll your offense. You burn the shit out of
I
the
don't know.
clock and walk down the field just to keep your defense off the field as long as possible. And if it turns into a track meet in the fourth quarter, at least you've still got most of the playbook left. But it definitely is going to be a struggle, and I feel bad because I do feel like this could have been their year, and still potentially could be. Um,
We'll
but
see.
but you just like at this point, it's stopping the bleeding, and it's like you can't with so many injuries, you need every advantage you can get. So you have to play the rest of your games this season to make sure you get home field advantage
Eh,
or to try.
no,
But
I'm with
by
you.
playing Gibbs these last 3 games, if something happens, you're done.
Well, I
Like
think
he's not Montgomery is fantastic and he's better than most power backs, don't get me wrong. But you lose Gibbs and you just lost one of the most dynamic assets in the NFL.
no, I agree, but Campbell doesn't play scared.
No.
So, and you know what? I've always liked Craig Reynolds, and he's played tough when he's had a chance. He's going to get another chance,
Yeah.
and that's a good thing.
And the one thing that the one saving grace, at least in my head for the Lions right now, is that I believe Campbell's much more of a realist than most NFL coaches, whether it's like throwing in the towel or season's over or being disappointed or whatever the case may be. With Campbell, I just get this reaffirmation that he can actually genuinely look at the guys in the locker room, not know any of their faces because there's been so many injuries, and go, but you know what, guys? We're all here.
Right,
Everyone here belongs in the NFL.
right.
So we can make this happen. And if there's one coach that I think can bring that together, it's him.
We're gonna see because this has been a ridiculous amount. Now, other teams, I'm sure that we don't know as well, could cry the same thing, but it this has just been an absurd amount of injuries.
Well, and McNeil was the cherry that just I mean, it
Well,
was like the straw that broke the camel's back, I guess.
and
Like
Montgomery too.
Montgomery hurts, but with McNeil, we're losing so much pressure and run stops.
He's the 8th lineman that's gone on IR, and we may never, you know, Hutch. They say Hutch might be back for the Super Bowl. Okay, how ready is he going to be? Now I know he's working his ass off. You know he is. Carlton Davis got a broken jaw. The only time he could make it back is in the playoffs.
Well, yeah, we lost 2 corners in like 4 plays.
Yeah.
And it's just that's the other thing is we're not just losing like filling positions. You're losing all these skill positions. Like out of
Yeah,
everybody you don't want to lose, corners have to be number one on defense. They get the hardest job. Now you got to get pressure and all that, but corners, it's like once we're down to second string, these are professional QBs. They know who they're picking on. But when you're on fifth string,
right.
they're sitting there going, "Well, shit, this is easy." And by the way, I know your defense succeeds on man, and you don't have the horses to run man anymore. So play zone, and I'll gash you. Play man, and if I got a more mobile quarterback, he'll gash the living shit out of you.
The first ever 12-team college football playoff starts Friday. Number 10 Indiana is at Notre Dame. Now these are home games for the first round teams. That's at 8 o'clock. Now Indiana, Michigan played them tough when they weren't playing as well as we were at the end of the year. And I still don't think Michigan's a great team by any stretch. Shit, they're 7-5, so they can't be a great team. But you got Indiana playing Notre Dame, and Notre Dame's been playing good football. That could be ugly. It's at Notre Dame. Saturday, SMU is at Penn State. You know how much I love James Franklin. I would love it if SMU went to Penn State and spanked them, but I don't think it's going to happen. I think Penn State is too big and physical. Your thoughts?
No, I don't disagree. I think Penn State is a more consistent Georgia to me. Penn State is so good when they're on, they're borderline unbeatable, but they're not always on or they're on like 80%. And so if they have one of those inconsistent days, they can definitely be beat. Georgia, to me, however, is one of those teams that it's like if they're not 100% on, they can get the shit kicked out of them by anybody. But when they're on, they're the scariest team in the country.
There's a few of these games. Now, these are Friday and Saturday games. Again, Indiana at Notre Dame Friday. Saturday, there's 3 games: SMU at Penn State, Clemson at Texas, and Tennessee at Ohio State. The A couple of these games, I give SMU a chance because of Penn State's coach, because of James Franklin. I give Clemson a puncher's chance against Texas because of Sarkeesian. And I give Tennessee, that's an Tennessee seated ninth, Ohio State seated eighth.
I think Tennessee wins that game.
Okay, what happens if they win that game to Ryan Day?
Nothing. The fight. I was reading an article about it right now, and supposedly the big rumor is the only reason he hasn't been fired like 2 years ago was because the financial obligation is so
Yeah,
ridiculously abundant with him.
the payoff's like $39 million or something.
And then you've got to hire a new coach.
Well, and here's the deal. I mean, I heard
And
a guy
who knows
say,
how much
I
of your
heard a guy
staff
say it the
leaves.
other day, and a Michigan fan called in. He goes, "I hope Ryan Day coaches at Ohio State forever."
Till the day I die.
Yes.
Yeah. I hate him. I do. I despise him. He just pisses me off. He's got a face that I want to punch. He's got an attitude of a little sissy, and I don't even like when the fight happened from the players planting the flag, and you see him just walk over and then turn around and walk the other way. That's how you know you're a piece of shit. You're responsible for those players. Regardless if you like what Michigan did or not, or if your players would do the same thing on Michigan's field or not, you're responsible for these kids and you just turn your back and walk away?
He said he was in shock.
Well, I'm sure Princess was.
He's like, I mean, his record is ridiculous. It's like 66-10.
Yeah, but when most of those 10 losses are against
No,
Michigan,
4 of
right? So 40%.
them.
40% of your losses are against the one game that matters.
But again, for the reasons you said, I mean, it's a huge buyout, and I don't know that I got the number right, but it's a big number, millions.
But he's
millions and
what? 1
millions.
in 4 against Michigan,
Yeah.
coming in off of what, 7-0 or something like
Oh
that?
God, they dominated us for years. I
What was
think we
Meyer?
won like
7-0
3 out
for
yeah,
Meyer?
I think we won 3 out of 16 or something prior to that, but Urban Meyer, he never lost to Michigan in my mind. I don't believe so.
No, he didn't.
And Jim Tressel didn't either.
Yeah, was he from, like, Youngstown State or
He
something?
was. But yeah, the I find it amusing that people would even consider firing Ryan Day, but
Because of his record?
they're going to.
But, I mean, this is when you're
No, they're gonna
talking
consider it is what I'm saying.
when you're talking about, like, tradition programs,
Yeah.
this is like, we dealt with that at Michigan with Harbaugh. It's like when he wasn't getting results for the first couple of years, everybody had him on the chopping block. Everybody's wanting to
Oh,
push
big
him
time.
out, and it's like, you can see what he's building, but he needed time, and that's the thing that I think is most underrated in sports, but especially college sports because you don't retain players for a decade. It's only, you know, if you're lucky, 2 to 4 years, and so it's one of those things where it's like, it takes longer to build a program than it does to decimate one. And when Michigan went to the spread and went through the Brady Hoke era and Rich Rod era and all that, it decimated like the lineage of having a perennial contender. And to rebuild that and someone expected in 3 or 4 years, it's like, get the fuck out of here,
Well,
man.
guys like Saban was talking about this openly the other day. He goes, "I have to re-recruit my same players every year to keep them from leaving."
Yeah.
And he didn't want to do that anymore. I explained Ryan Day to Alan the other day on the phone without even knowing that I did it. But once I said it, it's like that actually does make sense. I took a long way to get there, but basically what I said was he so wants to beat Michigan playing Jim Harbaugh football, like punch in the mouth.
Oh, his ass is sore.
Yeah,
Yeah.
because that's what Harbaugh did. And even some of the games Harbaugh lost,
But I think it shows
we
like
we dominated the
I
lines.
think it shows the weaker mentality though and
No,
why he shouldn't be the coach there
I,
if you're a Buckeye fan
that's what I'm
because
saying.
he lets you get under his skin. And that it's like if they played in space, did screens, RPOs, they would have put up 100 points on Michigan this year and kicked the shit out of them. But he wants to run between the tackles. And it's like, dude, this is stubborn to the point of stupidity at this point
You have got the best skill players on the field.
in
That
the
that
country.
wideout, freshman wideout, and he's not even their leading receiver. Again, that guy could play in the NFL now, and he's a true freshman.
Yeah.
That Jeremiah Smith or whatever his name is. And they have others. And their running backs are both great. And their quarterback, won the Big 12 last year or played in the Big 12 title game, at least, Will Howard. But he is bound and determined to beat Michigan playing bully ball
And
and
he can't.
can't do it.
Well, and I think it shows how not ready for the moment he is because it's like you look at Michigan and what's plagued them all season, and you go, we've got skill players. We can't get them the fucking ball
No,
because we don't have a good quarterback. You've got a great quarterback, great receivers, great running back, a pretty good line, good tight ends, and you're choosing to not get them the ball. You're not ready for the stage, man. But
it
I
was
will take Ryan Day as long as they'll keep him.
that's what this guy said. No, again, so I'm looking forward to the playoffs. I think there may be a couple of surprises. Hopefully, there's the way it's set up. These games are, you know,
I I feel like they did a disservice this year with the way it shook, with the way it fell, just because I thought we had an opportunity to make Power 5 conferences the staple, and I know a lot of people disagree with that, but I
Yeah.
don't think the majority disagree with that. And so for me, you know, like the coach at Indiana bitching that they didn't get a higher seed because they're not Michigan. It's like, you're not.
No.
And you never will be. And by the way, you played like one fucking ranked team.
And
And when
Ohio
you look at
State kicked your
Michigan's
ass.
yeah, and when you look at Michigan's schedule, it's like everybody across the board was ranked top 25. And so to compare them is insane to me. But they did well in the Big Ten, so fine. Maybe that team squeaks in. But this year, to me, you had a perfect chance to snub Notre Dame and bring in Alabama because Alabama should be there. And I know that people don't like it, all this shit, because Alabama's always there. But it's like, yeah, and they have 3 losses. There are justified reasons to exclude them. And there might be another 2-loss team that should have been in there. But I do think Alabama is one of the better teams in the country, especially right now. And we had a chance to snub Notre Dame and say, you're not in a conference. This independent bullshit doesn't work. If you want a chance to be in the playoff, you have to commit to a conference so that you're committed to playing tough opponents.
It's going to happen. I do believe it's going to happen. And I believe it'll be the ACC because that's where they want to play because that's the weaker of the Power
Yeah,
5.
but that would prove the point.
No, it is.
It's
It
like you
is.
don't want to go Big Ten or SEC, you want to go ACC.
Maybe
That's
we
proving the
can
point.
reconvene after, at least certainly after the semis, because these are the quarterfinals, and maybe we can reconvene. There's a couple things on the list I wanted to talk about, 2 shows. Okay. I saw it the other day, and I used to watch the show. It's called Northern Exposure.
Mason just shit his pants and it smells
That
terrible.
sounds awful.
Oh, you didn't hear him back there?
No. Well,
It
thanks a
it
lot.
was like letting out a balloon without the squeak. And it's just, oof, that's enough to make you gag.
Northern Exposure is a show about a little town.
He just gave
in-
us southern exposure.
um, um, called Sicily in Alaska, and it was in the 90s. The first episode was in 1990. I believe it was on for 6 years. It has a really, I mean, it's just this cool show. I watched it when it was on the air, at least for the first 2 or 3 years when it was, every week. Well, now the whole series is on Prime. And again, it's very quirky. I think you'd love that show if you watched it. It's really quirky. And all the characters are quirky. I mean,
What's the fundamental principle though?
okay,
Like,
there is a Jewish doctor who's a graduate of Columbia who, to repay his student loans or as part of his repayment of his student loans, he has to do 4 years as a designated practitioner for one of these donors who paid for his education in a place of their choosing. And he thought it might be some exotic place, and it turns out to be Sicily, Alaska. And it's a little town. And again, his name's in the show. His name is Joel Fleischman. And
so this is fictional.
oh yeah, it's all
Okay.
fiction. And he's very Jewish. He's very quirky. He's from New York, and he's in Sicily,
Nice.
Alaska. And there's these people there. It reminds me of going out west, which hopefully we'll talk about that coming episodes. I really want to do that while I still can. I want to go out there again. Almost everybody you see out there, like whether it's somebody waiting tables or working at a convenience store. And I've heard the same thing about Alaska, although I've never been. Almost everybody out there's got a story about there's some weird reason they ended up there.
I would hope so.
Well, Sicily, Alaska, all the characters in Sicily, I mean, not all of them are like that. Some of them are born and raised there and just have lived there their whole life. There's a lot of, Native Americans, um, and it's just I think if you gave the show a chance, it's on Prime, that you'd really like it.
Are they Eskimos in Alaska, or are they just
I
native?
think
I
so,
don't
but
know.
I
I I'm genuinely asking.
no, I don't know that people use that term. They talk about
Is
their
that derogatory
I
now?
don't know. Dude, I don't know. I'm
Fair enough.
I'm
You're the
not
one watching the
I'm
show
not
about
hip on all
it.
this lingo. That's why it's a Native Americans. But
Should we
anyway,
just pull it down? One of them
there's
colored
another
guys.
oh my
Uh,
gosh, that was so bad. I remember the first time that Elliot heard him say that, and he just looked so stunned.
JJ brought a book home from the library the other day. I should go upstairs and see what the title is because it's terrible. It's like The Colored People or
Oh
something like
boy.
that, but it's like paintings of people and each colors an emotion. But when you look at it, it's a black book, and it's something like
That's
that.
awful.
The Many Colored People, I think, is what it's called.
Dude.
And it's like, what are we thinking here?
This other show that I had on there, but again, Northern Exposure, it's a series that was on for like 5 or 6 years on network TV. I it's a really quirky show. I'm not all the way through it yet, but I watch 2 or 3 episodes every time.
So is it just this practitioner's daily life, or is there like a subplot to this?
There's a million subplots. There's a guy who owns the local bar restaurant, who is a local legend. He, I think, pretty much grew up there. He's 62 years old and his girlfriend is 18.
He's doing something right.
Yeah. There's a retired astronaut who owns thousands of acres and owns the local newspaper, the local radio station, and he's a self-proclaimed big shot. There's him, who's quite a character. The lady who runs the general store is a character. There's a bush pilot who's a lady, a woman, and the sexual tension between she and Dr. Fleshman is amazing.
Dr. Fleshman.
Yeah. There's a ton of subplots. And then my favorite character is named Ed, and he's a native, and he looks like a native. And I mean, this
See, like
dude
Chief from One Flew Over the Cuckoo's
almost,
Nest.
yeah, he looks
Hey,
like a
Chief.
native. Yeah, and but anyway, it's full of great characters. I just give it a try. The other one that I put on here, or that you put on here for me, was To Catch a Smuggler, and then there's that, and there's also Contraband. There's one's a spinoff of the other. The fascinating thing about these are real documentaries. I mean, these are talking about Customs and Border Patrol people finding contraband or drugs in
Right.
anything from a woman's compact to the underbelly of a semi that's loaded with 2,000 pounds of meth.
That's one way to party.
No, I'm not kidding. The fascinating thing to me is that, and they catch a lot of it. Well, there's obviously a lot of it they can't catch.
Right.
And again, it's being smuggled. Like, okay, they could take your computer, and ship it, and it would look like brand new in a box that was brand new and look like it was the manufacturer. The drug cartels have companies that make these dummies and the boxes to look exactly like the real product. And inside there'll be like 8 pounds of coke. I mean, the I guess the intel that the cartels are doing, and there's a lot of just like ma and pa smugglers, like single
Right.
people that are trying to get away with something, and trying to bring something home, an ounce of this, or you know s- a pound of that. But man, I mean, these cartels are, and meth is bigger now than coke. but they ship it all. They ship black heroin, they ship coke, they ship meth. Fentanyl is big now too.
which is just
And
scary.
that'll fucking kill you. I mean,
Yeah.
quickly. The fascinating part about the show to me is how they hide it. And the ends that they go to hide it. Like they'll have people at the Mexican border and their gas tank will be full of bags of meth or coke. Meth is like the bigger thing now because it's so cheap to make.
Right.
But their gas tank,
Well, and you can make it in a
like in
lab.
a 20-gallon gas tank, it'll have capacity for 4 gallons of gas. And the rest is full of bags.
Yeah.
They'll have in shampoos, they find a way to disguise it inside the liquid.
I've seen a documentary, and I am not recalling the name, but when you were talking about like the computer, it wasn't even just them using it for storage. They actually designed products made from the drug. So it's like you might have like a antique school bus that's a decoration for a shelf, and the whole thing's made out of cocaine. It's not storing cocaine, it's actually made of it.
Fine art, the frames are
Yeah.
made out of, or behind the picture and between the picture and the backing, there's a sheet of cocaine about a quarter of an inch thick.
Yeah, but it's 2 feet long in the painting.
Exactly as big as the picture.
Yeah.
And I mean, I'm just amazed. The last thing that was on the list, and I don't know if you've watched these or not, but
I've seen some of them.
these progressive like don't turn into your parents commercials,
Yes.
and you guys are all that. Like you guys you're buying the house, you just bought the house.
I'm watching myself do it.
Exactly.
Like, when did I get pissed that the door was open and we're now air conditioning the neighborhood? Like, that's just
But there,
quit hanging on the doors.
sometimes
Like,
there are ones that just grab me, and I just think they're hilarious. Do you remember the Bud Light Dude commercials?
yes.
Dude, dude. And he's sitting in a dimly lit room with a girl on the couch, and his roommate goes walking by in jockey shorts, and he goes, "Dude." Or they belly up to the bar. He gets a Bud Light. His buddy's drink comes. It's got an umbrella in it.
Yeah.
He's like, "Dude."
Dude.
Well, this guy, his name is Glass. He's the white-haired guy who's trying to get people not to be their parents.
Mhm.
He's kind of like the moderator in all this. And he'll be like, there's one where he's trying to, a lady's walking up and she's trying to take a drink. Let me take that for you, out of the
Yes.
guy's hand. He goes, he's
He's
still
still
drinking.
drinking it.
And then he walks up to the guy behind the grill,
I love that.
and where he's wearing the apron that says "Boy Meets Grill."
Yeah.
He goes, "You could take it off, or I'll take
Yeah.
it."
He goes, "Take it off." And the guy's like,
This
this?" And he's like, "You can take it off or I'll take it off."
one of my
It's so
favorites,
good.
which I haven't seen since the beginning of football season, is when a group of them are going to. You can tell it's like a professional football game, and they get there and they're talking about how good the parking is.
Yes.
and and then they're talking about when they should leave, and they're not even there yet. When they should leave to beat traffic, and they're
Mhm.
not even inside the stadium yet. And he goes, all right, let's not talk about when we're going to leave. We're not even there yet." And when you see kids turning into their parents, is another one that's super funny. A guy's out scrubbing his garbage cans, scrubbing like the dumpsters.
It is wild,
Well,
but you
funny.
do it. I mean, you do it, and
It's
you
funny.
inevitably turn into them and have very similar habits. I think that's like it's one of the most interesting paradoxes that's out there because typically people don't get along when they're too similar. But like parents and children are so different but those children are eventually gonna be like their parents.
Oh, yeah.
And so it's almost like it's a time paradox where it's like you're not getting along because you are gonna feel this way in the future. Like
Dude, I have seen there are so many ways I am like my dad. Oh my god. It's, like, frightening.
Melissa all the time, she'll be like, "You just did something like your dad." And then it's the creepy thing to me, though, is that she does stuff like mom.
Wow.
Not like her mom, like my mom. And it's like, well, aren't you just 2 peas in a pod right now? In fact, I told her that the other day. I go, "You guys are 2 peas in a pod. It's a retarded shitty pod, but it's the same pod." And she got a kick out of it, and it's just like, they do they do stuff like, I'll be walking, and she's got her little rain windbreaker on, just like mom would wear. And I'll be walking, and she comes up and, like, hooks her arm. Instead of holding my hand, she hooks her arm through my arm, and I've literally looked at her multiple times this year and gone, "Jane?" 'Cause that's my mom's name.
That tablecloth.
What?
We have one exactly like it.
Yeah. One thing that will not be the same, we're not allowed to have roosters all over the house, or chickens.
Yeah, well, she's out of that phase now. There was a while, long time she was into
She's
cots.
gonna she's gonna be into that meme that's all over TikTok, or it was last year, and it's about to come back around for Christmas. Because this guy's got a redneck voice, and he's like, when I turn around, there's a little red truck with a Christmas tree." And it's like an F-100 with a Christmas tree out the tailgate. And Dad, I bet if you walk around this house, there's 3 of them at
No kidding.
least. Oh, it's like the new thing, and girls love it, especially for there's ones that are for Thanksgiving, there's ones that are for Christmas, there's ones that have little Easter eggs in the back. It's like they're all over, and most of the time it's red, but not always are they red. Sometimes there's something else, but this guy is poking at his wife, and he's like, "And then I open the fridge, and there's a little red truck with a Christmas tree." And he keeps doing this, and everywhere in the house, there's all this shit. It's always these same
That's
little
funny.
decorations. It's just fantastic.
That's funny. By the way, one last thing.
Yeah.
One last thing. And you and I have talked about it, but we haven't talked about it at the podcast. I I was so happy to get your boys to watch The Wizard of Oz, and they watched it all, and they liked it because they started watching it again the next day. Did you get any feedback from them?
No. They
You didn't?
talked with Melissa about
Okay.
it. Like, they definitely talked about it. As far as, like, I shouldn't say no. Yes, I got feedback. I just got 3 and 5-year-old feedback.
Yeah.
So it was like, "We watched this. We like this," and then they sang the songs a little bit. But it wasn't like they explained the plot to me or
No.
anything, but they did enjoy it, and but it was stuck in their head for a few days, thanks. And Melissa was all excited about it. She loves it, and I think that's huge. Like, she gets tickled that you're tickled to share something with the boys, and then I think they genuinely like it anyways, but they like it more because you like it. And then when they come home and talk about it, and they're tickled and you're tickled that they liked it, Melissa's more tickled. And I'm just sitting here
She
like,
gets
all this
another
over a
she gets
silly
another
movie.
little red truck with a Christmas
Yeah,
tree.
yes, she does. Yep. Oh my goodness. Those things are everywhere.
All
But
right, man.
well, I'm good to stop there. You?
I'm good.
Sounds good. Well, to all of our listeners out there, if you stuck with us this far, we appreciate you listening. And if you have any feedback, please let us know. But on that note, be safe, be smart, make good choices, and peace out. Love you, Dad.
Love you too.
Bye.
Bye.